Agile training will talk about what the product owner is supposed to do. And if a particular group goes through your kind of typical 2-day Agile training, once the product owner goes back to their normal world, they've got a pile of stuff to do that is, what we call legacy responsibilities, right? They've got all of the stuff that they needed to do in the waterfall world, all of the reporting, all of the document creation, all of the stuff we were just talking about. None of that stuff is value creating. So what I often see is product owners will say, well, I don't have enough time to do the backlog refinement meeting. I don't have enough time to do the story, to get the stories ready for the sprint. And it's kind of like a chef saying they don't have time to cook. I'm like, what do you do? Why are you a chef if you don't have time to cook? What are you doing? So one of the things I've tried to do as a coach is to figure out where product owners are spending their time and seeing if I can have them hand off those activities to other people, or allow leadership to just let them decommission some of this legacy-based reporting or document creation or whatever else they're doing that makes it impossible for them to write stories for the teams, which is literally the number one point of their role. So let's go back to the 4-quadrant perspective over here. And I just want to check in and make sure that this isn't flying over anybody's head. I know we're using it a lot. So hopefully the repetition of how the categories break down has been internalized by people. But is any part of the 4 quadrants still unclear to anybody?
Yeah, Leor, I'm having a hard time with the bottom right quadrant, because often things in the bottom right feel like they would belong more in the bottom left or in the top right, which I suppose makes sense because those are the two that it's, half it's shared with or whatever. But can you just sort of maybe explain how the bottom right differs from top right and bottom left?
Yeah, the bottom right is the one that's kind of the hardest to wrap our heads around, because it's kind of like how they say a fish doesn't know that it's in water. So the bottom right is the water, right? The bottom right is anything that contains the rest. It's the environment in which everything else takes place. So anything that's a working process, tools that contain data, the flow of work going from like step 1 to step 2 to step 3. There's kind of like this flow of someone on the team does something, then someone else does something, then someone else does something. We all know those things are happening, but unless you actually map it out and visualize it, nobody really ever thinks about it. So in the context of what we're talking about with the product owner, which is not the best example, but the product impact on the system, right? So products exist on some kind of a technological system. And so building a product on an existing system, the environment in which it lives is going to impact the rest of the system. And then products exist inside of a kind of a family. So if you think about Microsoft, Microsoft Office is a product that's inside of the Office suite. So if I'm doing an update to Office, then I need to, and Office is on the upper right here. Then I need to think about, I can convert things from Word to Excel, and I have to make sure that those things didn't break, right? It's the environmental element of it. Paul just reminded me over chat of my analogy between cars and highways. So if the car is on the upper right, the highway is on the lower right. And if we don't pay attention to the health of the lower right, then it's like a car on a bad highway. Slows everything down or could damage the car.